So in order to kind of make this a little bit more engaging, the cameras with that, you have two different cameras.
I did see that. So we actually get to see the Rob Meister today. See, I think this is the podcast. Me and you doing the tech stuff, being my snurdly. Yeah, baby. That good looking guy. The women in the nursing home, so. Nicolette just said our mics are on and they can hear us.
Indeed, I am no.
For all you early birds out there listening to us right now, hope we didn't say anything too crazy. Hey, good morning, everybody. Hope you had a wonderful and blessed Christmas break with family and friends. Some of you out there probably still on break, so if you catch us later, hope it was a good one. Thanks for joining us today. Doing something a little special today. We're going to have part 2 of our conversation on hashtag make foster care obsolete. And I'm in the studio by myself because everybody has abandoned me. That's what they always do, Rob. They always abandon me. Everybody that I love just always abandons me. I'm joking. I got the Rob Meister back there. In fact, I think we get to see him today. No, we get to see you today.
Yeah, you can.
Look at
There you
there.
go. There I am.
There you are. It feels so professional today, except for the fact that
I don't know what I'm doing.
that they caught us talking live before the show started, so that was pretty. I think we were talking some strange stuff too. So, anyway, if we said anything weird, sorry about that. Hey, let's talk. Let's talk about foster care and how do we make foster care obsolete? Why do we even want to make foster care obsolete? It's something that I've been passionate about for a long time, and we're going to talk today about not just why I'm passionate about it, but why a lot of folks out there are passionate about it. If you add up the people who work in the system, the people who've been involved in the system, certainly the children of the system who are now, many of them grown up and adults, trying to advocate for massive change and reform in the system. Right? This is a system that affects a lot of people every day, and so there's a growing voice out there demanding change. And I'm making a prediction here that we will see something very significant happen to foster care within this decade. It's going to happen. There's just too many forces rising up now, and the system is so broken that there's going to be something that happen. And my fear is that this rush to reform this or to end it or to abolish it will catch a lot of children and families off guard, and there'll be more hurt than help. So while I believe there needs to be some kind of change, something happening, I use the word obsolete rather than abolish or end. It's like this, Rob. Do you have a cell phone, right?
I do, yes, sir.
Let me see it. Let me see you. Well, I mean on the camera, silly. There it is. Now let me ask you a question while you're still on there. Do you have a landline at home?
I don't know.
Have you ever owned a landline in your adult life?
I haven't.
Okay. Why is that?
I never needed to.
That's right, because it's obsolete, right? That cell phone that you have in your hand has made the landline obsolete. Now, there are places that have landlines because there's some places that have a particular need, right? If you in a government agency and you needed to make sure that communication happened in a some kind of disaster where cell towers went down, for example, landlines would be important. So they still exist, but they're mostly obsolete. In fact, we would say to the average person, landlines are obsolete. Now, the creator of the cell phone, they didn't start out saying we're going to end landlines, we're going to abolish landlines. They just created something better, and landlines became obsolete. So that's what we're talking about when we say that we want to make foster care obsolete. That one day people will look back and go, I can't believe we used to use that system.
Right.
That's what we're working for. So let's do a little orphan history for a second. Now, let's put up. I've got three people we're going to talk about. Do you know who this is, Rob?
This is George Mueller.
And why is George Mueller famous?
Well, he had an orphanage in England in the 1800s, I believe. Right?
You're absolutely right. The Bristol Orphanage. This gentleman right here, strong Christian man, probably rescued more orphans in his lifetime than anybody else. With few exceptions, nobody even comes close to the number of orphans he cared for and schools that he created for children who didn't have those opportunities. Who's our next person we have here? Do you know this person?
I didn't know this one before you emailed it to me.
This is Charles Loring Brace. Does that name mean anything to you, Rob?
Unfortunately, no. I have no context.
Have you not been paying any attention to former podcasts that we've been doing.
I
Do you remember Mary Ellen Wilson?
I do remember her. Oh, that's where this guy came.
That's
from the picture.
yes. So this is my hero. I love Mueller, but I really admire this guy. This is the inventor of the orphan trains. So probably impacted the lives of more orphans in America than anybody else, and really is the beginning of foster care. When he said, "Let's empty these orphanages in New York, and let's get them out to families out in the country, good Christian families," and that was the beginning of foster care. Do you know this next person?
Yeah, this one didn't pop for me either.
Okay, this is Edna Gladney. She was a huge adoption advocate. She had been adopted herself. She probably oversaw, or she did oversee probably around 10,000 adoptions in her day. Huge adoption advocate. But what she's really known for is changing the stereotype or the stigma that came with adoption. They used to use the word bastard as an official title for children who were born without having a father identified as, who that was. And this would be on birth certificates. It would carry on into their adulthood. And when she was alive, for example, you couldn't get a government job if you had the word bastard on your birth certificate. And so she rallied the Texas state legislature to change all of that, to drop that from birth certificates in Texas. And she won the argument when she said there are no illegitimate children. There are only illegitimate parents. And so these three, what I call orphan heroes, have done a lot, right, in the service of kids. But they never went upstream to try to make what they were doing obsolete, right? Mueller built huge orphanages, but never was able to take the time to kind of go upstream, if you will, to say what's causing all of these orphans. Same thing with Brace. He loaded all these trains and kept them heading out west to find families, but never where are these kids coming from? How do we stop this? And the same with Edna Gladney. There were 10,000 babies adopted under her leadership, but no effort to go upstream and say how do we stop this? So last time we talked about making foster care obsolete, we used a image of 6 football stadiums. I think you guys created a little bit even better graphic for this, because here's the 6 stadiums filled with people. And this is about how many kids are in the foster care system on an annual basis. When you count the kids who are in the system and the kids who are going to come into a system with any given year, it's about 600,000, more than 500,000 kids. And last time we talked, we said, you take all the emotional abuse cases, physical abuse cases, and sexual abuse cases, you need to fill up about half of just one of those. All the rest of those are neglect cases. And the point that we made last time is if you really wanted to make foster care obsolete, you have to focus on the biggest cause of that, and that's neglect. So we're seeing all kinds of kids come in the system because of neglect, which is often just associated to poverty. So this is something that we could easily go upstream and solve, but we're not. Right? We let this thing just continue and continue, and we keep putting these kids into this broken system. It is absolutely broken. Next slide, Rob. I see these images on the internet all the time. I'm sure you do too, right? We now celebrate when a child has been in the foster care system and is now adopted, and that's a beautiful thing. It's a wonderful thing, right? And we're happy for this little girl. But this is, to me, this is a picture of shame not for this little girl, but it's a picture of shame for the rest of us who first of all, whatever created the problem that put this child in foster care, and then that she would languish in foster care without a forever family for 1,015 days. Why are we celebrating this? We should be mourning this, that she lost her family of origin. She was in a broken system, and she languished that day without a permanent family. Now, if truth be told, she's got about a 50-50 chance that she'll stay with that adopted family because of the trauma that's already been that she's already experienced. Will create behavior problems, particularly as she gets older. And the adoptive family may not even know how to deal with this. And we've seen it before. We call them failed adoptions or disrupted adoptions. The adoptive parents, it's like taking a puppy back and say, I wasn't sure what I got, and I don't know what to do. So 50-50 chance that girl's going to end up back in foster care. So obviously the system is broken. So to make foster care obsolete, we've got to go upstream and figure out what's causing these kids to go into the system. And I love this quote here. Every heartwarming human interest story in America is like he raised $20,000 to keep 200 orphans from being crushed in the orphan crushing machine, and then never ask why an orphan crushing machine exists or why you'd need to pay to prevent it from being used. Is that making sense now, Rob?
That one for me was the hit between the eyeballs, you know, because I think that I, like most human beings in America, are going to look at this whole thing and say, hey, yay, look what we're doing. We're rescuing these 200 orphans and we're raising this amount of money, but we never look at the other side of it, which is, wait, why does this exist at all?
Yeah.
Very eye-opening for me.
So in this next slide, I think we'll see maybe a hint of why. CPS is designed to fail half of its kids. And the reason I believe that, at least, is because that's exactly what happens. This gentleman here, this quote, every system is perfectly designed to get the results it gets. This is Paul Baddelton. I'm probably not even pronouncing his name correctly. He's on the faculty. He's emeritus professor at Dartmouth Institute, and he is an expert in database and in systems and systems theory. And he basically says every system produces what it was designed to produce, right? A system doesn't have a mind of its own. It just, you put input into the system and it produces a certain result. If you want a different result, you have to change the system, not what you put in the system, but you have to change the system. The system that we're talking about is now over 100 years old. There's been all kinds of movements in the past for systems reform, and they've been tweaking the system. They've been changing regulations, adding laws. They've been throwing millions and millions and millions of dollars into this system, and it continues to produce the same results. So the question is, why is the system doing this? Well, it's doing it exactly what it's meant to do. So what do you think, Rob? Why do we allow the system continue to do this?
I think if you boil it all the way down, it's because it's comfortable. We who aren't affected by this and are best positioned to change it aren't having any consequences of it persisting in the present, right? I don't think that we're looking down the road and seeing, hey, this is going to continue to create a lot of the social ills that we're trying to get rid of, and we haven't gone upstream enough to really recognize the fact that this is causing us discomfort. We just don't realize it, and I think it's just we get caught up in our own, right? I'm going to get in the fast food line at Chick-fil-A. I'm going to pick up something on the way home, and my pleasure, and I'm on my way. And this isn't interrupting my daily routine. So, in all honesty, we just allow it to continue because we're comfortable with our daily routine.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point. There's no urgency on our part because we have no investment in it. It doesn't affect us personally. So, surveys have showed that the vast majority, we're talking in the high 80s, every survey I've seen, 86, 87% of the American people believe that the foster care system is broken. I've done all kinds of, informal surveys, talk to people all the time, and they all agree that it's at least broken. Some people believe it's not just broken, but it's corrupt. And there are those who believe it's even more than that. It's unjust at its core, right? But here's the thing. Even those people still believe that the system is needed, right? That it's important because it does an important job.
Right.
And so they all recognize it's bad, but it's like this, it's like we need the police. The fact that we need police tells us that, something's wrong, that you got to have a police force. And they would even say that, there are corrupt cops, there's injustice in the system, a lot of police departments are broken horribly, but you can't just get rid of it because, it's needed. So there's that part of it. The second part of it, you're stuck on this slide there, Rob. I think they want to see my pretty face here right now for a second. Because I need to make an emotional appeal to the camera. So back to me real quick. Right, there you go. Right. Here's the point. So all those things that we've just said are true. There's nobody who's been in the system, or I should say there are very few people who've been in the system that work now for the system. In other words, those surveys I've just talked about, how everybody believes that it's broken, but they think it's necessary, and so we can't really do anything different. It changes, Rob, when you interview foster kids. You interview people who've been adopted. There are movements right now happening where people who were adopted as infants, who never met their family of origin, who believe that the whole adoption thing ought to end as well. Right? They'll say the adoption industry is racist. The adoption industry is corrupt because it's influenced by money. And so there's this thing called the primal wound. You could be adopted, never know your family of origin, grow up in a good home with a good family, but there's still a hurt that they never overcome. There's something deep in a person that wants to know why I'm not part of my family, right? So, but there are very few people like that who are working in foster care, who are working in government, who make these decisions. And so there's no personal investment in this. They don't come at it from a point of trauma or hurt or deep wounding. To them, they're just a bureaucrat who's making sure the system keeps working. So many have called it the child welfare industrial complex. It's like the military. It's we've got billions and billions and billions of dollars flowing into this system. You've got this general population who says, yeah, I don't like it, but it's necessary. So there's no real pressure to change it. And the money isn't encouraging anybody. There's no initiative to go upstream and solve this problem. All the money is in the services, right? So I use the word obsolete. This concept of making foster care obsolete comes from the innovator Buckminster Fuller, and he said basically that the only chance that any system has to change is to ignore it and build a new system. He said you're basically wasting your time and energy building a system once it's embedded in society, once that kind of money's flowing through. No amount of protests, no amount of legislation, no movement is going to change that system. He said the best thing to do is to starve that system, ignore that system, and get busy building a new system. And that new system will make the old system obsolete. So it's just like that cell phone, Rob. If the inventor of the cell phone spent all of this time talking about how horrible landlines were, I don't know if it convinced anybody. Everybody say, well, I need this, right? Here's new technology, and this is what it can do for your life. So in making foster care obsolete, there's some of this in which I'm trying to show people how broken the system is, and from an orphan, former orphan's perspective, how hurtful it is. But we've got to get beyond this and start dreaming and creating and building a different system. And that system will make the old one obsolete.
What's the key to that, Mr. Day? I mean, I think, you said something very interesting, that people who come through the system don't work for the system later on. So it seems logical that those are the people that would build the new, that we would create something that they would get a chance to feed into and say, hey, this is what I think it needs to look like because of my lived experience.
Well, let me tell you, here's a good example of why that doesn't happen. So the orphans who get caught up in the orphan crushing machine, have high A scores because they've been traumatized. So they're often caught up then in, destructive behaviors, drug use. They get caught up in being homeless or crime, and so they're taken out of the game as being anybody useful for building the system. If they don't, or if they come out of that and get healthy and better, physically they can't. Right? There's a lingering depression. There's pain. There's give you a good example. So people with high A score of 4 or more have a lifespan of 20 years less than the average citizen. So by the time that they reach any place in their career, they could make some impact. Most of the time they're already taken out of the system, right? Yeah, thank you for reminding me what time it is, Rob. So that's partly where it is, right? So, listen, we've been talking about some pretty heavy stuff, Rob.
Yeah.
Let's
dial up a little humor.
Let's dial up a little humor and let a child speak to us for a little bit.
All right.
Let's recognize her moms, and she pretended it's horse.
So whose lipstick is that?
Mine.
You bought it?
Yeah.
Where'd you buy it at?
My lipstick.
Yeah.
I buy it from Home Depot.
That was her Lipic. And she bought it from Home Depot. Yeah, who wouldn't want to make sure that little one was safe and protected and nurtured and loved, right? The reality is there's, 100,000 of those little girls in foster care right now who was not loved, cared for, and nurtured appropriately. And being in the system is, is that the best we can do right now? No, I think we can do more. So a couple other slides, and we're going to wrap up real quick, Rob, because you're telling me we're running out of time. I appreciate you doing that. Next slide, please. That everything we've been talking about impacts minorities, people of color, much more than it does us white folks. And we got to remember that, right? 1 in 10 black children will be removed from their homes before they're 18 years old. Does the child welfare system need to be abolished? How much disproportionate harm does this system do to black families? So there's folks out there who are recognizing this. So if it's disproportionately destroying black families. So we need to do something. Next slide. Or our last slide. That was our last slide, wasn't it? No, there's one more, I think. Yeah, here we go. So everything we talked about. Here's some places that you can get some information about this. If you go to the Journal of Public Child Welfare, you're going to see a lot of what I'm talking about. And here's a good article. And it is not a broken system. It is a system that needs to be broken. And this article talks about the up-in movement and its emphasis on abolishing the child welfare system. Right? I have the same goal with this. We have a broken system, and it needs to go away. But I'm not sure the term or the emphasis of abolishing it's like defunding the police, right? I get that there's problems there, but you don't just take cops off the street. So while we are supporting the current system to make sure kids are safe, there's got to be enough of us with enough resources to go upstream, find out what's bringing these kids into the system, and then we got to build a system that is there upstream that takes care of these families and take care of these precious children so they never end up in foster care. You with me, Rob?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Hey, how do folks find out about us? If people miss today, where do they go to catch this episode?
Yeah, I'm going to get that up on screen for you here so that way you can see it. And there you go. They can just go to our YouTube handle is Patrick Henry Family Services. Nice and easy.
Nice and easy.
No crazy stuff to have to remember there.
But then there's a collection of community connections, right?
Correct. Yeah. So they could. We have a few playlists and collections of media that we've assembled over our time doing this, and you can find all of these broadcasts on our Community Connection playlist.
Excellent. Well, we hope to do more of these Make Foster Care Obsolete in the future as we kind of unravel the system and try to start building new. And in the next one, I will begin to show you at least preliminary plans, a strategy, if you will, of how we make foster care obsolete. So until then, hey, pray that God blesses you, that you go into the new year with all the hopes and dreams, and that you will find peace in the presence of our Lord. See you next week.
Purely based out of what I believe outside of Patrick Henry, I think everyone benefits from counseling. And ultimately, if you have awesome parents and good friends and a strong support system and a connection to a church, counseling may not look as official as people that actually care about you. They want to hear how your day's going. They want to support you and validate the way you're feeling. So sometimes that counseling doesn't have to look as official. Unfortunately, for a lot of our families, they don't have those support systems. They weren't raised in a safe household. They don't have mom, dad, brother, sister to call on the phone. They don't have someone to stop in. The amount of times that I speak to some of my clients and they're like, yeah, it's the first person I've heard from in 5 or 6 days. That's a wildly humbling experience to know that I'm the person calling them because no one else has asked, hey, how'd that court hearing go on Tuesday? As much as it's not, like I am not a counselor, but I am someone who loves them and cares about them. So stepping into those conversations, like counseling happens in the sense of what that word is. It's not a clinical setting in the slightest, but it is a place to speak and be heard. And that is not unique to me. Martha and Cameron do the job just as well in that regard. Ultimately, we care about our families because we care about them, not because it fits what our job says we're supposed to do. So there's definitely a place for my personal passion of counseling to step in and care and hear and respond and then remember the next time and come back and check in and say, like, hey, how did that go? Or simply sometimes it's looking them in the eye and telling them they're doing a good job because no one does that for them either.